week, they're building up their forces along Ukraine's border for a counteroffensive in the summer or the fall. So when they talk about peace, it's all talk. Look at what they're doing on the ground, and you'll see that Putin's trying to delay, drag it out, prepare for another military assault to gain land by force of arms. That's what I believe is going on. President Trump yearns for peace. He made it one of his priorities to end this barbaric war. You have to have partners to achieve peace. I don't believe Putin is a willing partner. I believe Ukraine has done everything that President Trump and others have asked. They've gone to every location when asked. They've done everything in their power. They've accepted a ceasefire proposal, unconditional. They put a list together of things that would be necessary from their point of view to end the war. Russia, delays. They haven't produced anything in terms of their demands for peace. And I don't think they're ever going to, because they don't want peace. They want more war. They assume that the West will get tired of this and we'll back off and we'll just give up. That's a big mistake. So let me tell you the state of play in Washington. We have 82 United States senators co-sponsoring legislation that would impose bone-breaking sanctions not only on Russia, but those countries that buy Russian oil, gas, uranium, and other products. 70% of all Russian oil is bought by China and India. So the way forward, I'm going to Paris and I'm going to Germany after this trip. I'm going to urge our European allies to lower the price cap, to make it harder on Putin's fossil fuel economy, increase OPEC production, and lower the price cap. If Europe will do that, it will matter. It will hurt Russia's war machine. While Europe goes down that road, also level sanctions on China, the Senate will act. We're going back to brief our colleagues. I'll be talking to the majority leader, and he'll be talking to the minority leader, Senator Schumer. We'll have a briefing by Ukrainians next week in the Senate, and we're going to hit head-on this idea. Ukraine is not losing this war. That's Russia propaganda. If you look at the map a year ago and look at it today, it's virtually the same. So to those who say that Russia is winning this war, that is Russian propaganda. We're going to be briefed in the Senate about the state of war, about the future of the minerals deal. To the American people, this business relationship we have with Ukraine in the critical mineral space is going to be a godsend to the American economy. These minerals are the lifeline and the lifeblood of the 21st century AI economy, and there are plans being developed now to extract these minerals for the benefit of Ukraine and the United States. So I would expect next week that the Senate will start moving the sanctions bill. There are House members that are ready to move in the House, and you'll see congressional action. President Trump said that this next 2-week period will be outcome determinative. I see nothing about the meeting in Monday in Istanbul to give me any hope at all that Russia is interested in peace. So when this 2-week period is over, I think it'll be pretty clear to everybody Russia is playing a game at the expense of the world, not just the United States. We're going to change that game for Russia. The game that Putin's been playing is about to change. He's going to be hit and hit hard by the United States when it comes to sanctions. China, the game you're playing with Russia is about to change. If you keep buying cheap Russian oil to fuel Putin's war machine, there'll be a 500% tariff on all of your products coming into the United States. So the game is about to change. Enough of talking. It's now time to act. To China, choose wisely. You want to be seen as different? Act different. You want to be part of the international community in a positive way? Help bring this war to an end. You, above all others, could get Putin at the table if you chose to. And finally, we don't talk enough about this, but Russia has kidnapped almost 20,000 Ukrainian children as part of this war. They were taken from their families. They were made orphans because the Russians put their family members in jail or killed them. Those children are coming back. You have my promise that I will do everything I can until my last breath in the United States Senate to bring these kids back. You know what terrorists do? They kidnap children. So Russia's acting like a terrorist state in so many ways. If there's not a breakthrough in returning these children back to their families in Ukraine, it's long past time to say to the world that's an act of terrorism by the state of Russia, and you should wear that label in shame. I have not forgotten about the children. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks. Well, first of all, my thanks to all the team in the United States Embassy. We've been here 7 or more times over the last 3 years, and except for one of those trips when the embassy was closed, we have been in huge admiration of the courage and conviction of our foreign service, our troops, our diplomats who are here on the ground. Let me begin where Senator Graham ended. I met this morning with some of those children who have been abducted and kidnapped and brought back. And my heart was in my throat. The trauma and tragedy of those children whose lives will be changed forever. That terrorism is on Vladimir Putin's hands. And if anybody deserves to be called a terrorist today, it is Vladimir Putin. And Russia deserves to be called a terrorist state unless those children are brought home. 20,000 of them still in Russian hands, going through re-education. That is a word that denotes terrorism at its worst, imposed on children. I also visited a place in Kyiv, Svivatoshno, a neighborhood that is decimated now. It's a shell of what it was, but 12 or more people died there and more than 80 injured by missiles and drones that were targeted at that site. They weren't there by accident. Vladimir Putin is killing, injuring, and maiming innocent civilians. Only terrorists do that kind of atrocity, and he has rightly been called a war criminal. So the question is, what do we do about it? It is crunch time for Vladimir Putin. He has to show up and put up, or the entire fury of the world should be directed against him. Clearly, he has the opportunity to make peace or continue this war. If Vladimir Putin stops his brazen, brutal attack, the war ends. If Ukraine stops, Ukraine ends. The burden is on Vladimir Putin. And right now, let's be very blunt, he's playing the United States for a stooge. Americans don't like to be made fools of. But that's what he's doing. Clearly, obviously, prolonging and playing for time, stonewalling and stalling and stringing out the President of the United States. Americans won't stand for. So his promise about something new in 2 weeks, his saying that there'll be some kind of meetings in the future, all of this gobbledygook is clearly just a play for time so that he can go to the battlefield in his offensive. And the response of the United States Senate will be clear and unequivocal. 500% tariffs on anybody who buys his oil or gas or petrochemicals. 500% tariff on India, on China, which buys 70% of those Russian products, and anybody else who buys them. And I have been tremendously heartened by the support we've received from our European allies. They are heroes because they have said, go for it. Do the sanctions bill. Even though they continue to import some fraction of their total, maybe 10, 14%. And as Senator Graham said, we'll be discussing with those allies. We're headed to Paris from here to talk to the top leadership there. But it has to be a unified approach. And I will just say this finally. For anybody who says, will that sanctions bill pass? There are very few legislative measures in the United States Congress. You can count them on one hand. And that's with a couple of fingers missing. That get 82 co-sponsors evenly divided on both sides of the aisle. For anybody who says or questions whether the United States is behind Ukraine, think of 82 senators who disagree on a lot of other things, maybe some of them almost on everything else, coming together and standing behind Ukraine. So to the people of Ukraine, let me just say, we are behind you. We're going to stand with you because your cause is our cause. Your fight is our fight. It matters to our national security to stop Russia's bloody, brutal assault, because Putin will keep rolling if he's not stopped in Ukraine. He will keep going against Poland, Sweden, Finland, and so any kind of plan that resolves this conflict has to guarantee Ukraine's security. Let me repeat. Security for Ukraine against any other similar Russian attack has to be part of a final resolution here, whether it's through NATO or some other way. Ukraine's security has to be a fundamental element, and possibly not through what we say, but what the United States does in imposing those bone-crushing sanctions, isolating Russia's economy, putting him on a trade island, will deter him from launching that spring offensive or summer offensive and coming to the table in a serious way. But Vladimir Putin has to know that the end of stonewalling and stalling is now. It is crunch time. And if he turns his back on serious proposals, blood will be on his hands. The blood of innocent children and women and soldiers who are killed as a result of his refusal to face the truth, to talk seriously, and more than talk, to act seriously. Because the time for his gobbledygook and his delusion, and I think it may be self-delusion, is over now. The people of the United States are with Ukraine. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you, Senators. We'll go ahead and take questions. The first question is from Elena. Elena from We, Ukraine.
As to the fate of the bill, we will go back, brief our colleagues about our visit. I think Monday will be another example of a Russian charade. A meaningless meeting. You know, President Trump said that Ukraine doesn't have good cards. Well, Russia's much bigger and has a lot more people. I get that. But the world has a lot of cards against Russia. And one of those cards that we have is about to be played in the United States Senate. In America, you have more than one person at the card table. We have three branches of government, and the House and the Senate are poised to act. What would change our mind? If Russia came to the table, agreed to a ceasefire, and earnestly sought peace, there'd be no reason to proceed. Assuming that doesn't happen, we will proceed. Ukraine will brief the Senate and the House about the status of the war and about how the sanctions could affect Putin's war machine. I told President Zelensky I've been coming here a lot. I've never been more optimistic than I am today, and let me tell you why. It's becoming clear to anyone that Ukraine is ready for peace, is willing to make sacrifices and compromise for peace, is willing to stop the fighting to achieve peace. It's clear to almost anyone Putin is not remotely interested in anything that would lead to peace. So there's a card game going on this summer. The first cards are going to be played by the United States Senate and the House, where we set in motion sanctions against countries who buy Russian oil to keep their war machine going. From here we go to Paris and we go to Germany. This should be the summer of coordination. I am urging that our European allies increase oil production and lower the price cap, which will have a detrimental effect on Putin's war economy. I'm also urging Europe to get tougher with China.
You know, I just want to emphasize a point that Senator Graham made. I am never optimistic in dealing with Vladimir Putin. I am hopeful, and at the end of the day, I'm really confident about Ukraine, because when you think about how far Ukraine has come, first time we visited here, we went to Bucha, where the Russian tanks were stopped only weeks before. The Russian tanks were stopped after the United States military said they won't last for 3 weeks. The Ukrainians are going to go, and we're offering Volodymyr Zelensky a helicopter ride out. And President Zelensky said, "Don't send me a ride, send me ammunition." That has been the spirit of the Ukrainian people. That's why I am confident. But we also have to give them military aid. We have to give them more radar. We have to give them more Patriots. We have to give them more artillery. We have to give them more planes, because they need that kind of military support, not just rhetoric. And I will say this in direct response to your question. We're not waiting to find out what Vladimir Putin is going to do. We're moving ahead in the Congress. And I am very, very hopeful that our moving ahead will send a message to Putin that he has to put up and show up. But I don't know whether he will take that message, because here's the other thing I think about Putin. I think he underestimates the United States of America. I think he thinks we're weak and indecisive and that we'll never get our act together. He doesn't understand what 82 senators coming together from both sides of the aisle mean in terms of practical import. And these sanctions will cripple his economy. They will be bone-crushing to a nation that is basically, as one of our colleagues once said, a gas station with nuclear arms. He has one resource, and we are going to throttle that resource as a means of revenue raising.
Thank you, Senators. Next question is Anastasia. Anastasia from Reuters.
Hi, thank you. My question is, have you had any recent conversations with President Trump regarding the sanctions? And do you have an understanding of what would be considered for him?
I talked to President Trump before I left. My goal from day one is to create bipartisan support for tools that would help President Trump get Putin to the peace table. These sanctions would do that. As you can tell from his public statements, President Trump's very frustrated with Putin. He talks in vague terms about peace and he kills children during the night. I think as the Senate begins to move, you'll hear more from President Trump. I think he's reached a point now where he is looking for concrete action by Russia, and unfortunately nothing has happened. He talked to Putin a week or two ago. They were supposed to present a memorandum of what it would take for a ceasefire. Nothing's happened. I think President Trump feels like he is being, they're delaying. I know him pretty well. He wants peace. He wants to end this bloodbath. But as Senator Blumenthal said, I think Russia is making a huge miscalculation here. Let me tell you where America's at. We see Putin as the bad guy, the killer of children, and Ukraine trying to maintain its freedom against an aggressor. That's the widespread belief. And if it were not so, you wouldn't have 82 co-sponsors.